I remember seeing it.
I do. I did. I forget tonight because I didn't think this was the same. But then I realized this was a swimming activity. I put it just.
Okay. If he's but I will make a note of this. Take a picture. We should have this. Now he has it. What's he doing with it? That's why I told him. Should we wait for everybody to do a damn thing? I don't know. He was so on his way.
It's gonna be late.
All right, so Alyssa just texted, she thought it was 7, her husband's not home, I told her just do it from.
Yeah.
She was planning that coming.
I didn't.
Sam, are we good online? Alright, we will call the meeting to order at 6:03. I appreciate everybody. I know it getting started a few minutes late.
Hey, be quiet.
Calling the meeting to order at 6:03. I want to take a minute and show my appreciation and gratitude for everyone showing up. I know it's not a pleasant conversation to have. It's an important one. And the fact of the matter is a lot of districts have gone through this over the past 3, 5, 10 years, some multiple times. So the fact that we've been fortunate enough that this is the first time in 10 years is very fortunate for us. Looking forward to hearing everyone's input. And with that, I think we start with introductions around the room. Jim Forkey, School Committee Chair. Carrie.
Hi, everybody. I'm Carrie Buston. I'm a Mendon representative.
Vicky Levinson, Upton representative.
Hagan, Upton representative.
Paul Flaherty, Upton Finance.
Maureen Winnell, Select Board.
Dennis Westgate, Director of Public Works and Interim Town Manager for one more day.
Monday, it's only Thursday.
Tomorrow's a half day too. It'd be
How many
very
minutes
kind
is
to have. Laura have chair of the Upton Select Board.
Mike Rager, Mendon FinCom Chair.
Ron Saludo, Mendon Income.
Elena Brugos, Mendon Select Board.
Jason Cooter, Select Board Chair. Mike Morale, Mendon Select Board.
I'm Jay Byer, I'm the Director of Finance for the district.
Maureen Cohen, Superintendent.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cheryl Kirkpatrick, Assistant Superintendent.
Mike Goddard, Mendon Select Board.
Sean Dixon, Mendon representative on the school committee. Eric Brown.
He'll be here in a couple of
Eric's
minutes.
on his way
He's
from
in
work.
Hopkinton.
We have Carl online
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, folks online.
Carl Hummel, Mendon Finance Committee.
Is Jeremy there too? Or?
And Jeremy Stallman, Town Administrator.
Okay.
It's all right. All right, now that we all know everyone's name, I'll pass it off to Jay and Maureen to. Actually, we should probably all do our
Call to order.
call to orders for each
Sure, I think we do.
board. We've already done ours, so.
So Upton is not having an official meeting today. We didn't post for it. And one of our members couldn't be present for this. So this is more for, we didn't want to slow the process down. We wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to have this conversation, but we're not going to be having a formal meeting.
Well, appreciate the participation. And over to Mendon.
Yeah, be looking for a motion. Oh, no, I'm just gonna start the meeting at 6:06 and we have 4 members. I was just looking for Brendan, 4 members in the
Mendon Finance Committee doesn't have quorum, so it doesn't matter.
Awesome. Well, thanks I'm gonna also thank you for coming on pretty short notice, but we're trying to, and responding quick enough for us to be able to have a meeting. We felt it was really important to have the conversation as early as we could, building off of our presentation at school committee, which was this past Tuesday, a couple of days ago. And we have our budget hearing, and then the certification is on March 9th. And we wanted to make sure we had as many conversations as we could before we went forward and get feedback from all of you. So again, really appreciate, I know a lot of us have meetings, I'm hearing other nights of the week, so it's a lot. We will not be doing a 90-minute presentation, which is, if you want to watch that was Tuesday.
86 minutes.
80, was it, did you? What?
No, that's what we're doing tonight.
Oh, no, yeah. What we did is we took that presentation, got some feedback, made some updates. It's shorter. We have additional slides at the end, but we want to get to some key points and then have enough time for us to have conversations. All right, so our first goal to provide an overview of the current status as of today of the budget. We want to share details regarding our key cost drivers, so we'll talk a lot about that. And we are going to talk a little bit about the local revenue. So, but if we have all of the slides, so if you have questions, we can go deeper into that, but we want to make sure we didn't do that full presentation tonight. And our goal is to have a collaborative discussion. If we go back about a year ago, when we were here for talking about capital projects, I have to thank anyone. I know not everyone is here tonight that was there at that meeting, but it was really helpful for us to get the kind of feedback and the questions and to work through that over the months, and just I'm hoping for the same. All right, our headline, I like to talk in headlines, is that accelerating costs are now exceeding what public funding can sustain. And we're going to talk about what our gaps are and what's really driving it this year. And it is looking a little bit different this year than previous years, where we find ourselves at a critical juncture. If we look on the left-hand side, one option for the towns might lead us to reduction in services. Another is to continue on our investment in our needs and our strategic priorities. And I cannot say enough, and normally for the budget hearing, I'll go on and on about how great our district is, and I will do that in a couple of weeks. But we are in such a great place right now. It's always been awesome here. It really has. We have great people and we do good work, but our strategic plans that we've now been building off for the last decade, the last one, the one in the middle, and here, we're 3 years into it. We're making such incredible progress in lots of areas, but there's still room for growth. And just want to say things are really great, and we're hoping to continue that. The last time, and I think Jim was alluding to this, the last time we were at this bigger juncture of roads was in 2015. That was around the time we had one of our strategic plans called Forward, where we were trying to keep on building on some things that we had lost with major cuts going back to what year was that, 2009, 10, and we were building that back. And that's the last time that we had a larger operational override. At the time, the superintendent, Joe Rushtek, stated, and those who have been around and were there, he said, about every 5 years, it's possible we might be in this state. We got to 2020 and I came into this role just soon after that, about a year after that. But because of how we have been managing our funds pretty conservatively, we were able to raise our reserves and use some of those to go a little bit longer. We had COVID relief grants that we used strategically. Honestly, we didn't just bring in a bunch of staff that we'd have to cut, which a lot of other districts did. And we've been reducing staff, reallocating staff, and making cuts every year and trying to close the smaller gaps. But it brings us to the point, because of our larger cost drivers, that we're not able to make the small cuts to get us by another year. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But it's been 11 years that we've been able to manage this through. Since I've been here and with Jay, we've really been trying to be as transparent as possible about our budget. We did the same thing with the capital projects last year, kind of, every piece of information you want, we're going to put it up there. We've been doing the same thing in our budget presentations. I may have heard that sometimes we might over communicate some details, so we're working on being more succinct. That's one of my goals. But we're on our website, we're trying to put up every single one of our budget presentations so people can go back and either view the videos or see. I've asked the departments come forward. I know some of you attend the meeting, so thank you for attending. But at our last budget hearing a full year ago, this was the slide that we talked about. we've been in and if I went back to the year before, we had something kind of similar about the implications for the next year. And we know, and we talked about it when we closed the gap last year, that we were going deeper into reserves that we really would have liked to. And we said we wouldn't be able to do it this next year. We used more of a grant called 240 grant. We're maintaining level services. And I had a snowplow screen that said, these are all the unmet needs that we keep pushing them down the line because of the revenue, the lack of revenue to move forward. But with the structural gap, for those who have seen, some people have referred to, I think Mike, you said, like, we remember, we talked about the guy standing over the cliff and looking on, and we had it in the last 2 years in our presentation because we knew this structural gap was starting to widen a little bit, and that at some point it was going to get too wide. So this is my visual for that, for the community to be able to understand it. But on the rocks in there, we're going to be talking about health insurance, special education, the flat state aid that we haven't been getting any help there, fixed costs, etc. Our goal is to, with the collective, talking through, how we can do this with all of you, is how do we build that bridge across to the future and to continue along the path? And it's my job, Jay, all of us here, school committee, to advocate for what we need and to explain it and to answer questions, and that's our goal. I want to be able to point out, and I'll continue to find other state information, but we have a couple highlights here. This is not a Mendon Upton challenge only. It really is a state issue. I was on a Chapter 70 webinar today with superintendents, and they said, make sure they don't think it's just the towns. Like it's the state formula. Talk about that, and gave some ideas. I was at a legislative breakfast where we're advocating in Worcester County. I have a slide related to that about how Worcester County, how we're being impacted. All of the towns are being impacted. And I sat at a table. I won't say the names of the districts, but I sat at a table with 4 superintendents and hanging their heads saying, the budget and the cuts, and this is what's happening. And it was every single one of us. But we've been in a much better place than a lot of our surrounding towns because of the community support over time. But many school districts are being threatened with this cycle of declining resources. If you start on the left-hand side, upper left, state funding freeze. Because of the formula, it's hold harmless, as they say. Our aid is flat because of our enrollment. We're not a town that going to have a sudden influx in the number of students that then we're going to get more state aid. Our per pupil costs are still rising. Our fixed costs are still rising. And the only thing we can do is to cut services, cut positions. And then that leads to a competitive disadvantage potentially, because then more people will end up leaving our district, which leads to a drop in enrollment, and it keeps going. So it's a cycle. And at the presentation yesterday, 45 Worcester County districts are stuck in this cycle right now, some way worse than us. And it ends up we are in this state where we need to either continue to cut or we need to be able to look for additional funding. And that's kind of the point that we're at tonight. I'm always going to talk about our strategic plan. You can find it on our website. I'm not going to go into details, but if you haven't been watching our presentations, we've added one goal this year into our strategic goals, and it's around student performance, and it's about closing the gap of our students on IEPs in their academic achievement. And it's a 2-year goal that we've added based off of data. And you'll see a lot of the positions, and what we're talking about is to help support our ongoing work in this area. We've already seen some improvement this year as a result of our efforts and Cheryl's efforts and our teams, but I will reference that and just want to point that out. We have guiding principles in our budget. It's always about the students. It's about the whole child. It's about all of their needs. They're listed there. We have adjusted this a little bit. We have a needs-based budget that we're going to be presenting to you tonight, and we'll explain about that. We need to make sure we're in full compliance with state regulations, particularly in special education, which has come up. We had an audit this year and been working on some of the compliance action steps on that. And part of it's related to our decrease in staffing we've had the last couple of years in that area. And I want to emphasize, we're really trying to be transparent and fiscal stewards. We kind of talk about that, and we understand that there's limited resources, and just want to acknowledge that as well. So I'm going to walk you through the budget options. We have been, usually I use my hands a lot here, but you're looking over there, but I'd be pointing to the level service budget. I forgot to put an arrow. Where the level service budget, we have been at a level service budget for the last, well, I'll say since I've been here the last 5 years. And our focus has been to make sure it's level services. We're maintaining our class sizes, our programs, our services. That's the floor, that's where we start. Then periodically, we've been able to add a position or a program or support in the needs base. We've been able to work on some of our strategic goals to remain competitive, and we've added a position like I'll give an example of an assistant principal because of the growing needs that we had, and we gave examples a few years ago, and that's been really helpful at one of our schools, and we really needed that. That was in that upper level. We did that a number of years ago. We're at the needs-based budget. I'm going to explain what that is, but that's addressing our critical mandated needs of our students and the compliance issues that we've been facing. Strategic, I'm going to give a couple examples so you just know what we're talking about when we're at the strategic level. It's when people say, there'll be someone say, how come we don't have the elementary world language position that was in the strategic plan 10 years ago? Because we don't have the funding for it. How come we haven't expanded world languages at the high school to add more world languages? We haven't been able to do that. How come that they're things we want to advocate for if that's what the community is looking for in programs, but we haven't been able to meet all of those, just a couple. So moving forward, what we don't want to be is in the space of the reduced service budget. It would be major cuts to all existing services, and I'll talk about that as well. But that's the option that we're at, that below that dotted line potentially. Every year I've organized staff requests. These are all the staff requests that came in this year. If we had them on posters across this room here, you would see that every year I just say, tell me what you need. And then we prioritize them, and we start at level services, and every once in a while, maybe we can get a targeted one. This is the list. Full transparency. I think it's important for people to see what our leaders and everyone's advocating for. We've been focusing in that level service and needs-based category right there, which leads me to this. In our needs-based budget, we've decided that we want to focus on class sizes, reducing our Clough Elementary School. Its current grade 2 is averaging about, I should have changed that to 25 because we got the final number yesterday, but 2 of the classes are at 25, one's at 24. And the goal that we want for class sizes would be, I think what it said, it was typically, at the end of my slides, 22, 20 there. Yeah, so it's right on my slide. Under 20 ideally, and I have the class size numbers at the end. Special education, our number one position, just going back here, is the special educator at the middle school. We cut a special educator at the middle school, and what we found is it hasn't been working as well this year. We have a number of students coming up from the elementary into the 5th grade, and we can't meet the needs with the numbers that we have. And that's flatly where it's at. Same thing at NIPMUC. Last year we cut a special educator, and it's been hard for us to meet all the needs with the class specially designed instruction that they need and some of the additional support. Mental health and evaluations, we have 2 school psychologists in our district. They do, even experts, school psychologists in here, and you can answer questions for us, Carrie, but what they primarily are doing right now are evaluations for all of our students that need to be evaluated. They do academic evaluations, and they do all the psychological evaluations. So if you have concerns, you bring it forward, you think a student might need to be on an IEP, you ask for an evaluation, that's what they're doing. Their caseloads are so large that honestly, we're afraid we're gonna lose these high quality school psychologists because it's so large. But what they can't do, which you can have in other districts, is if we have a third school psychologist, then they can split it up more evenly and we can provide supports for students. So when you think of going to a psychologist and getting supports and getting counseling, getting other resources, they'd be able to provide that, but they can't. They're only focused on the evaluations, which are mandated. All of these positions directly impact our student support and our compliance with state mandates, which is why it's in our needs-based budget this year. So we're going to jump to expenditures and costs related to all of this. Yes,
Question.
sure.
You said state, so state has mandates on class size?
Not on class size, on special education.
So the first bullet about getting 24 to 25 to 120.
That is our best practices
Right.
and our goals around class sizes.
Is
Yeah.
the 450, that was cost to do those 3 bullets, is that spread evenly across those 3 bullets? Or how's that allocation across those 3 bullets? Like, is the cost for the school
Yeah.
psychologist? I'm just curious.
So we can pull up,
School psychologist is a higher cost than
Yeah,
a class, a
because
special
they-
ed teacher.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
they're
I'd just be
more
curious, come back to it, but I'd be curious to understand the
is it on
cost
the
of-
slide?
Yeah, back.
I just want to see what you've asked.
That one there?
Yes.
Okay, good.
So you're asking, is the salary the same for all 3 positions?
No, I'm just saying, what's the
No.
cost of each bullet? The total is 450, that's
Oh.
all.
Yeah.
Okay. In the event
Yeah, we
we have to make a
We-
choice, how does that
Yeah,
cost
yeah.
break?
We have it on the slide.
Yeah.
We were advised to reduce our slides for all facts, so
No, that's fine.
we'll go find it, but yeah,
Well, that
that-
plus hurts.
we do, yeah, that's hurting me. I'm like, it's usually right here. But we can get that. But yeah, it's a really good point. And something that we do look at. But if I could only have one position, I've said this at every single meeting, it's that middle school special educator. It's our highest one. And if we needed more, then it would end up, we get to the different types of budget, it would end up being, cuts to other positions to meet the mandated needs related to special education and compliance.
And when you get to a granular kind of line item at this, Mike, when you get to a kind of line by line, like right now, our psychologist is running out, do so much work that you risk them leaving and having to backfill. And
My whole, just, I
If
asked.
you had
the
to
question-
choose one of the 3.
Yeah, no, because in my mind, we need to start looking this over multiple cycles. We can't go year to year anymore because that's impacting us, it's impacting you, right? Because you've been running a lean ship for a number of years. And then you got some surprises this year, health costs primarily. So I look at that and I say, well, what would happen more if I asked you to say, well, you've got 3, I know those aren't the only asks, of those 3 asks, but if I said, could we do some this year and some next year, what would that mean to you? And that would be driven by, well, what's the cost? Can I do 2 instead of 3? Can I do 1 instead of 3? Can we plan for 1 or 2 next cycle? That's all.
Yeah.
So you hear more of that from me as we go through this.
Yeah,
That's
and
my-
I think my intent too after tonight is, because I know a lot of people have asked it, you've asked it in particular, and we talked in a good way, and we talked about it at meetings to be able to show that long term. I have at all of their departmental presentations, I have them give like, what's your short-term needs and what are your long-term needs? And I can pull that together and say, but that is what we do,
Yep.
because if we end up having a situation where we can reallocate, which is something we did at the end of last year, we had a greater need here, and then enrollment dropped somewhere else, we're able to then move a position, so we're that prioritize. That's why I have the ranking, because we
Yeah.
kind of are going up in that
And
order.
just for full disclosure, it helps, and it's selfish. So from our standpoint, if I'm thinking about our 5-year plan, it allows me to start saying, okay, the schools might be needing X in year 2, year 3. Does that shift what we've started to plan for? That's all. So trying to put a puzzle together.
All right, so we're gonna jump to the key drivers and then go into more details, and I'm gonna hand it to Jay.
Hi, everybody. All right, so we have 3 main drivers in this year's budget. As you can see on the screen there, the number 1 driver for us is health insurance. Don't be alarmed by that 36.79. That reflects a budget number from 26 to 27. We have a challenge in this year's budget in that we've had a multiple number of people sign on for our health insurance mid-year. We generally plan for 4 or 5 a year, which is what it's been for all the years I've been here. This year, it was 16 about 3 weeks ago. I believe we're approaching 20 now. So it's a big jump number. Our premium increase for this next year is 25% as it stands right now. And again, I just want to reiterate, when you hear 25%, and I've heard like this district only had 3.5%, it's not the percentage premium increase, it's what the actual premium is. So I did check with that one district. Our premiums are the same as that district. So even though they only went up 3.5%, they're paying a lot more this year than we are. But that's our biggest driver is health insurance. It's $1.9 million. Next in line is salaries for all the employees district-wide, cost of living, steps and lanes for those that get steps and lanes. All those things factor into about a little over $1.5 million. The third one relates to special education. Most of that is related to out-of-district tuitions for those students that we can't serve their needs in the district. All those three drivers alone is $4.5 million, and it is 82% of the proposed increase that you're going to hear about as we move forward. Those are our three main drivers. If you break our budget down by the various categories between employee benefits and employee salaries, that's a little over 77%, almost 77.5% of our budget. That makes sense. We're a people organization. If you don't have staff, you don't really have a school district. I don't think that's abnormal for other places. You can see where the rest of them kind of fall in their categories, but those are our two big chunks of budget. Here's a list of all the various cost drivers. There's multiple ones, but the top 5 are the ones that we'd want to focus on, especially the top 4. I'm not going to read them all. I think we can go through them all. It's pretty easy to see, but those are our main drivers.
And after, if you have questions,
Yeah.
we can
Feel
go
free
into
to
detail on all of those. We can come back to it.
We'll spend a little bit of time on health insurance because I've become more familiar with it than I've ever wanted to be. Nationally, health insurance is a national crisis. It's not a state crisis. It's not a local crisis. I think everybody is facing it everywhere. This information came from the GIC, which is the Government Insurance Commission, which is a state insurance provider. They don't provide it, but they process stuff. 51% of districts and agencies are running over budget right now. It's a very common thing. There's a lot of drivers, but the biggest drivers you can see are pharmaceutical costs, of which there's no regulation or control over, so they get whatever they can get for anything they want to do. We also, as a district, have some very high claims, and that's a difference, and that's what charges your premiums and pushes them up, is if your claims are high, because one way or the other, insurance companies are going to make their money. They're not, we pay the claims no matter what kind of policy you have, so do the towns. It's a common problem. The market trend right now is around 20%. I think my understanding is that the towns who are both in tier 3 of Maya's plans are around 15%. We're at 25, which sounds high, but again, it's the premiums. And I'm actually going to try to collect data from the towns and from other districts to see what the actual premiums are, because I think that's what really matters. We did reach out. We are on a self-funded plan through Harvard Pilgrim as part of a group called the Mass Strategic Health Group. We tried to contact both Blue Cross Blue Shield and Mass Brigham Health, which are 2 major carriers who declined to offer quotes because our claims are too high. Harvard Pilgrim said, if you want to go back to a fully insured plan instead of the self-funded plan, you're going to be at 38%. So again, my math says 25 is better than 38. The GIC, we've looked at a lot of comparison data, which I'm not going to get into, but their premiums are considerably higher than what we're going to be paying next year. So it's really not another viable option. As far as health insurance costs, over the last 6 years, they've gone up a little over 7.5%. So a CAGR chart is a compounded annual growth rate. Kind of flattens out. This is what your growth has been over this period of time. But you can see that big jump is 27. We were pretty level, little minor adjustments as we went through these previous years. 27, our claims are so high that it's pushing it up quite a bit. Special education is another driver. So a lot of that is out of district costs. We're looking at a little under $4.5 million out of district tuition. These are children that we can't serve their needs. The tuitions at private and public out of district placements vary from the lowest one is probably about $60,000. The highest one can be as high as $700,000 for a student. That includes transportation. You can see the number of students. Those are the little circles at the bottom. We look like we're projecting to go from 16 this year to 22 next year. That's another driver, and we're pushing our costs up.
Do you want
To explain circuit breaker a little bit?
could you give a range of costs about a district? I think that's helpful. 'cause
I just
people don't know. Like a per kid?
Yeah, 50,000 to 700,000.
All right, my bad. I wasn't
So-
paying
attention.
I wasn't paying attention. I was on to the next slide. All right, good.
So
You all
question
hear it.
on-
I want to make
Yeah,
sure that you got that.
Interrupt if there's questions. Yes.
If it costs us 700K to have a student go out of district because we can't serve their needs, what does it cost for us to actually serve their needs?
We wouldn't be able to get the people to do that. It would cost us at least that much. I mean, there's kids that have that high of a tuition, they generally have 4 or 5 individuals just focused on them. They have facilities that accommodate the conditions they have. It's much more complex than just say hiring a couple teachers and sticking them with them.
What was your original question?
Is-
I didn't.
Well, why wouldn't we just hire staff and do it ourselves?
So there's 2 parts to it. What he just said, there are some students that absolutely out of district it would be too much for us to be able to do. I would argue though that it's potential, the more we've had to decrease, our staffing, which we have, we're kind of like around that cusp. And I think we'd be able to keep more students in. So a couple of years ago, we phased in, we have a social worker that's now at Clough Elementary, and we've kept students in district because we added that position. We know that for sure. It doesn't keep everyone in, but we did. So that one position has kept a number in, but we have some, they're going out a little bit at that middle to high school. If we're able to increase those supports, I can't make promises because sometimes what happens, you would have a student that just moves into the district. But part of it, I do think that we'd be able to keep more with a little bit more support.
But that can be, I don't know if that's part of the.
And then it does
proposition
save over
analysis
time.
of, hey, we can
Yeah.
cut half of those students so that are having to go out of district by.
Right, so we have done that to a little bit because there was a time, maybe 15 years ago, where we had about 35 kids
Yeah.
out. So we got it down to, you can see the low was around 18, but we're starting to creep back up. It's just significant needs that are sometimes beyond what we can handle.
Yeah.
This is also, you're hitting on the reason why if the budget goes down, then you get a cash effect.
Yeah.
Because then you have more people wanting out placement, you have more people doing. More costly things.
If we offer the service, do they have to stay in district or can they still opt out?
They don't opt out, they go through an evaluation process. Some
It's a
parents
team
do
decision.
want their children to be in a different setting. But ultimately, it becomes a legal issue where people, get advocates. It can be very complicated. Carrie, you probably can speak to this better than I can because you probably deal with it.
They have a team, not to go too into detail, but there's a team decision that's made and recommended. If, let's say, the parent didn't agree to that, then there's due process for them to, then maybe go to mediation or then go to hearing or maybe have a settlement, and then that costs us more. And so
It's
every
not
once in a
as
while it does happen, but we could keep some into.
It's not as simplistic as, okay, we've now possibly offered those services. Let's just say there's a value in being able to cut that 22 number in half by hiring 1 or 2 folks and a little bit of investment that is palatable, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't automatically mean that those 11 students will end up staying in the district. They could still be a lost investment because they could still advocate to leave the district for whatever.
Yeah. Sometimes that's that possibility. I will say some of the targeted needs-based investments we've had over the years. We used to have contracted services for some of it, and now we brought some staff on. That's helped keep kids in too.
Update myself.
Good question.
You can't
And I'm
Nancy
gonna-
Reagan and just say no.
Can I just make one comment real quick though?
Yeah, sure.
You look at the slide, even the previous slide, one of the reasons that we have been able to maintain the budget for so long, okay, just go back, or Sam, go back.
Well, yeah.
for a millisecond.
I don't have control.
But you can
Yeah.
see those first 5 years, before fiscal year 27, right? As Jay mentioned, a lot of schools had a steadier rise in health insurance. We maintained pretty low. We switched companies a couple times, switched plans, and then boom, we kind of got hit this year. You go to the next slide, on the out district or the outplacement, and we actually brought it down year over year over year. When a lot of times the national trend was be going up at 5 or 8%. And so those are 2 of the things that have helped us kind of get to where we are today, for better or worse. We've now run into that one.
You talk about the rise in claims. Did you analyzed that? Like, is that all healthcare costs that causes the rise in claims? Or like, have you talked about adding wellness programs and things?
We have
like
all of that. We have all those things. So we're in a self-funded plan. It basically has stop loss coverage after above 175,000. So we're responsible up to that amount. But we have several claims that are exceeding that now.
So
we're
it's just
hitting
the
that
general cost
Yes.
of healthcare, and then these claims, it's not anything special about those claims, it's just those claims cost a lot.
Right. Well, we have some very unique.
Yeah.
Illnesses.
But
that
out
are
of your control.
Yes, yeah, no, we don't get to tell people when they get sick. And apparently that's something you can't do. And
Well, sometimes if like a large portion of your healthcare cost happens to be like, mental health wellness, because you're not,
Right.
running a program that keeps your staff healthy, which is not what I'm saying.
Yeah,
no,
But like sometimes you see that where you
Right.
just push your program a little in one direction or the other, and all of a sudden your claims start to change. So,
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, with some medical claims, you can't really predict
Right.
things that are going to come down the pike.
So
Right.
do you see this happening again? Like, I mean, are you going in this direction and that's out of control? And
It's hard to say. I can't tell you, like the high claims that we currently have, I can't tell you if they're going to resolve or continue.
I think,
I can't get into specifics about the
Right.
claims. I am aware about.
I
many
think
of them, but-
you flip a coin. I mean, I think with 20 new people getting added to the policy, right? Probability increases of how many people are gonna have large claims.
well, also if you're providing good policy to your staff, they're gonna take advantage of
Yeah.
it.
We had
I
thought
know.
about just offering really crappy health. Apparently, that's not a way to go.
That is not true.
Yeah, anybody watching, ignore some of the things I
Jay
said.
is joking.
Jay likes jokes.
The switch to self-funded was a big reduction in.
It was a
costs
big
for
savings
tax year.
for us.
So we actually did reduce in 2020 fiscal year 2026.
It's what helped us keep a level budget into 26.
Right.
And we had to negotiate with the staff to do that. I mean, it was a very complex thing to do, but we pulled it off. So.
But did you have to add, like, that's more operational load, right?
Well, so the issue we had this year that is a deficit in this current year is people can have what they call a qualifying event. Maybe their spouse loses their job and they were on their spouse's coverage. They come onto our plan, they have a child, they go from an individual plan to a family plan. We always budget additional money in the health insurance line to accommodate those changes. It's never been more than 4 or 5 people, which is what we did for this year. 16 to 20, you're talking $360,000.
So that also could be like an economy thing where being a teacher is a little bit more stable of a job, and maybe be
Possibly,
anything like
That's
that.
true. That's a good.
or maybe we offered a better plan. There's lots of reasons that people have these events that get them on, that bring them onto our policy. It's really unpredictable. We try to plan for it, and we're trying to plan for it again next year.
It feels like we have to dump, like Mike is saying about multi-year plans, like it would really stink to get surprised year after year after year with 20%, which is, what's happening to our town, 20 and 15, right? Like, if we could figure out how to dump some money in to just wait for that, like we do with everything, like, capital expenditures, retirement,
Right. But
I
then
know
you
none of us have the money
You have
to
to
do
then
that.
appropriate additional money that you
Right.
have available. And going back 3 or 4 slides, this is not a unique to Mendon or Upton or our school district. This is a national problem, and unfortunately, I don't think the problem is going to get solved on a national level. So therefore, somebody out there is making money, and it's not us. That's what it
No.
really gets down to.
I do want to mention one thing, though. I think a lot of people don't understand that the self-funded plan is cheaper.
Right.
And when they hear, for example, oh, they get their deductibles paid or something, that throws a lot of people into a rage because they're in a company plan that doesn't have that. They don't understand that it's a lot cheaper to do that.
Correct.
I've already had people say that to me the last couple of weeks. I was talking to someone and they said, well, they get their deductibles paid, but it's cheaper. Oh, no, it isn't. They don't, no, seriously, they don't understand that. I mean, I understand it, I'm in healthcare,
Right.
but a lot of people don't understand. I think that's gonna be an issue. When they hear the word self-funded, they're gonna, oh, well, they pay them. Why should we give more money? I'm just
Right.
mentioning that because that's, a lot of people just don't understand. They just don't get it.
So we did have a slide that we're not going to get into tonight about the difference between fully insured and self-funded.
We're not doing.
Man, the I told you so look.
But yeah.
But do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there was a reason when we and the towns did the same thing, went to a deductible plan, but picked up the deductible because it still saved the town money.
Right.
Our current plan does not have a deductible. Whether we move that direction in the future, it has to be negotiated. We can't just arbitrarily do things like that because it's a change in plan design. It's something we're going to consider going down the road, but it's not something that's an option for FY 27.
And I think when it comes to the negotiating on healthcare, that's something you give and take, right? When you say, hey, we can switch to this other plan, we're gonna save a lot of money. Well, it always comes to, well, what are we gonna get? And you gotta give something, and that could be deductible, right?
Moving on.
Okay, one,
Yes, Paul.
you budgeted for 4 or 5
Right,
new ones, and you've got 16 or 20.
right.
So that means you have a healthy deficiency
Yes, we do.
in this right now.
Well, we had two things impact us in fiscal 26. That was one of them. Our retiree Medicare Advantage plan, we offered to retirees as a January to December plan. It went up 68% January 1st. So that was another 200,000 that we got hit with that we didn't anticipate. I always plan for an increase, and I usually budget a little extra money to accommodate that. I did not plan on 68%.
You may need a new crystal ball. Bill.
Apparently I do. Mine is getting old. On a state level, special education transportation costs are continuing to escalate. This chart shows you through 24. But nowadays, right now, for special ed out of district transportation, you can sometimes be looking at $300 to $400 per day for a van to get them to and from schools. And it depends on where they go. We try to consolidate routes with other towns, with our students going to similar schools, do anything we can to save it, but that is a cost that's continuing to go up. So it's
Because
just
their costs are going up, or
Yeah,
because regulation?
no, they can't get drivers, so they have to pay drivers more. They have to buy new vehicles. They have to have
So this is-
specialized
It's
vehicles.
a statewide issue, and so I pulled this out of a 98-page report that just got released this past week, because they had to study the fact that the special education, transportation, and tuition costs are going up at such a rapid rate that they did a very in-depth study that we can share on the website if anyone wants to read the 98-page report, but to emphasize the fact that there are reasons for some of these costs going up that are external and out of our control too.
All right, moving on. Total budget right now, as it stands for this needs-based budget, is about a little under $48 million. It's about a $5.5 million increase. Going back to a previous slide, all but $1 million of that is related to those 3 drivers: health insurance, salaries, and special education. I realize that this is a scary slide, but this is kind of where we're at this particular point in time. On the revenue side, we've kind of broken out where our revenue comes from. We have the amount you see for, supplemental grants, budget offsets. We have 2 accounts that we can reduce the operational side because it goes into a revolving account. One is circuit breaker, which is special ed out of district tuition reimbursement. And the other is school choice that we appropriate out of annually to reduce a couple of salary lines. District revenue, we have money that we can put into the budget. Part of that comes from E&D, some revenue sharing plans we have with, we have a technology position we share with the town of Upton. We get Medicaid reimbursement. We have several sources there. State aid is the thing that is not keeping pace with anything. So our state aid, and we're going to show you something in a second, the state is not going to rescue us at all. Our state aid has been flat for 16 years now and is not changing. Mendon and Upton, that's the largest share, obviously, and it all hinges on where the towns kind of fall in what they used to call target share. Both Mendon and Upton's target share right now is at the cap for a state level at 82.5%. So the state's expectation is that the towns will pay for 82% of the public education. The state will pay for that other 17.5%. So here's our state aid numbers next year for FY27. We're going to get $185,000 in additional revenue. That's not a lot of money when salaries and health insurance are going up by $4.5 million. It's about a little under a 1.25% increase. This kind of shows you the compounded growth over since the last override in FY16. Less than 1% a year is what we're averaging in state aid. That's not going to change in the near future. The state looks at Mendon and Upton as affluent towns. The residents may not feel that way, but the state seems to think that they are. Transportation costs, we get reimbursed for regional transportation, but again, the cost of transportation is exceeding the pace of the reimbursement. So you can see it's kind of widening as we go. And the reimbursement we get in 27 is based on what we paid in 25. So they're 2 years behind on that. So obviously our costs go up 2 years later than what they're basing the reimbursement on. Charter school, if students in Mendon or Upton choose, if parents choose to send their kids to a charter school, we pay the tuition. We do get a reimbursement rate that varies from anywhere from a low of 5.5%, 6%. It looks like next year around 23%. We have 19 kids in charter schools for which we will pay $413,000 for their tuition. So that's a cost that we have to incur with a minimal reimbursement. And these numbers change. So for example, 26, you see numbers there. By the end of the year, they'll be different. The tuition could be higher, the reimbursement could be higher, could be lower. So we basically go with what's on the cherry sheet.
And are you working to try to figure out how to drive that number down, or that number is just a given and you expect it to kind of float up?
Yeah, we don't really have a lot of control. It's, obviously if parents choose to send their kids to a charter school, that's the choice they make.
If you look at there is something that's played into it. If you look on the bottom of the numbers that have gone, those are their students. So if you look at the last 5 years, it was 19, 19, 18, 16, 18, 17, pretty consistent. When I looked it up, it's a lot. Our families, one family decides they have
all their kids
children,
go to that.
not in all cases, but, and, we're fortunate there aren't a ton nearby. There's one, but, other towns get hit with a lot more when they have that. And, but since COVID, across some of the state and national trends, there was this massive drop in attendance, and everyone's across the nation's trying to bring students back. Some just left entirely, some went to other, options, but we've been working on it and we've started to, stabilize a little bit, but compared to some other towns, but that's played into it too. People are taking other options.
But it does go into that cycle we referred to earlier, where as you just continue to not have funding on a local level, let's choose.
Right, everything degrades.
If you look at this, though, go back to that for 1 second. You have 19 kids this year and next year, but yet the tuition is going up a little bit. There's not any control over that. We're limited by what the towns can handle within their levy limit. Charter schools don't fall into that. It gets set by the state. So they get the money one way or the other. So
Locally, yeah.
Yeah, so enrollments, everybody asked what the enrollment split. There's a slight swing toward Mendon for FY27, not a lot, about 0.75%, a little bit of a reduction on the Upton side. That's why the minimum contributions came out the way they did, because both towns are at target share, where last year Upton wasn't, so they got hit for a higher minimum contribution than Mendon did. I don't think we have to get into how this, does everybody understand how we calculate this local assessment? I'll explain it. I'll do it as quick as I can.
I think it's worthwhile.
All right. The way it's done, this is the state recommends this policy is you take all of your fixed charges. So anything that comes from the state, anything the district puts in, the minimum local contributions, which are not based on enrollment, but are based on property wealth and property value. You take all that out, the balance is then split by this enrollment percentage that you saw on the previous slide. So that's how it's calculated. Target share is calculated by the state, but it's basically based on property value and income levels. But both towns are at the cap of 82.5%. There's 191 districts in the Commonwealth that are at 82.5%.
And that's like census-based data?
It's based on income and property value. So it's based on.
But so they're getting that yearly then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it changes every year. So you're both at 82.5%, but next year we could be at 70.5%.
Okay, it's those numbers, they expect, income tax levels, that's 2 years back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
I expect the Mendon Upton will stay at that cap. Is my expectation, especially if you look at property values and where houses are selling. That's a big driver.
Does everybody understand MLC?
So MLC is minimum local contribution. That's a very complicated formula that I would love to tell you I could explain, but we don't want to stay here all night. But it's the minimum that they say the town should be able to pay towards public education, and they set that based on these target share values and property values. No district in the Commonwealth only pays or only funds it at that level. Every district is funded at about 110 to even as high as 140% above the foundation minimum local contribution. Both towns have passed prior overrides to help fund the schools. So you'll know in both towns, we have generally three lines. You have minimum contribution, transportation, net of state aid, and that's part of the regional agreement. And then what we generally is called operational addition. That's prior overrides from previous years. It gets appropriated toward the school district. And that can vary depending on how those minimum contributions sort of play into it. Did I explain it okay?
Yeah, I'm more curious about what the MLCs for each town are.
Actually, I don't think we're going to tell you that tonight. No, I can tell you that. We have it on the slide somewhere. I can pull up the spreadsheet. This is what I'll give you the breakdown in a second. This is the local aid. This is everything all combined. This is what each town would be looking at this budget for a net increase over the previous year. Again, we understand that this is a scary number. And I wish we could make it less than it is, but right now this is kind of where we are in the budget as of a couple of days ago. If you look at local aid trends through FY26 from the previous override, the rate of growth has not been tremendous, and that's mostly because we've been able to manage things through additional funding from grants, from our own fundings, but Mendon's at about 1.6%, Upton's at about 2.6%. Most of that, I believe you would say, is in the last couple of years because Upton wasn't at target share and Mendon was, so it kind of skews the numbers a little bit, where we fund the situation last year where Upton had an increase and Mendon didn't because the MLCs were so skewed. And this goes back into.
I'm sorry, but that's a huge slide. I mean, what we're essentially saying is the way that we've gotten the aid through, it's been within the levy limit. And now we're confronted with fiscal year 2027.
These are the, you want me to talk about this? I can.
Sure.
I'm on a roll.
You're on a roll. You go and I'll jump in.
Yeah.
How's that?
So we had like you saw 4 options previous, a strategic budget that basically tries to fill all needs that we feel that are important to make us the school district that we are. The needs-based budget, which is where we're sitting right now, that's that second column. A level service budget still requires at least a couple of teachers in order to kind of stay with what we're currently doing. And then you have that reduced budget, which would be basically based on the minimum contributions and information I've gotten from one of the towns as far as what they felt it would be the cap net increase they could handle within their levy. That's where we would be, which would be substantial reductions. These would be probably comparable to the reductions that were made in 2010 when we had some other major budget issues. We'd have lots of challenges. I'll let you want to address it any further than that?
Just on the reductions, it would be significant and it would impact all staff across all buildings in every area. And everything that we've been building up in the last 10 years, we wouldn't lose everything, but all of the additional programming, or let's say, we've worked on internships for students and we're working on, getting students to go out and connect with communities. We've expanded our AP offerings and had additional support for advanced placement that helps them succeed. And we, we're recognized for that this year. We have electives and a diverse range of electives. We have our music program that is performing and succeeds here. We have our athletics that can go on and on. It would impact all of it because of the gap is so large.
And not just the impact for next year, right? There's a spiral that happens because that charter school option that you just saw, right? More people leave the district and want to go to charter school. The school choice, which we currently profit from, people coming into the district, they say, well, no, I don't want to send my kid there anymore, right?
And we wouldn't be able to open up because we wouldn't have
Right, we
space,
wouldn't have
because
space to
if you
add more,
had
right?
to
It's a
reduce
revenue
it,
gain.
you'd increase class sizes, they'd be so great you couldn't,
And on top of that, if you have to reduce staff, you have to pay for unemployment. So it's like you create this ladder effect.
And then more students go out of district.
Let me
This
answer.
whole, yeah.
I'm going to answer Mike's question. The minimum contributions for Mendon is $9,295,109. For Upton, it's $11,998,726. Mendon's MLC increase is $433,787. Upton's is $315,973. So those are the minimum contributions. as they stand right now. And I will get all this information to everybody. I mean, I can send it, all the stuff out. We typically send it after we do our open hearing. I don't know where you guys, I don't know where Mendon is in their planning. I don't know where Upton is in their planning. I think we probably had these numbers up on a screen. So anybody that was at previous meetings should have them now. I'm
We
sure
can-
Paul's got them
But we
memorized.
can add a slide into just so we have
Yeah.
access to
I
it.
actually think I
Anytime we
was
have a
gonna do
question. Yeah, but I'm writing it down so we can just add it in. So it's just available. When we go back to this, so we're proposing the need-based budget here, and we talked about some of those positions. But there's also the strategic budget. So if we're thinking about what was requested, and we've already level funded a number of items across, we've, reduced, made some reductions in level funded, but over time, if there are ways for us to chip away, a lot of those are kind of like the snowplow where we keep pushing off. I give an example of, it's a minor one, but I think we understand it with tech support. We've had free tech support. We have 4 buildings. We have, it's on one of our slides, thousands of devices and in order, they do an amazing job. Sam's over here doing, he wears multiple hats, and we do what we can, but that position has been asked for a decade. And we had more positions at one point and had to reduce along the way. But it does have an impact on instruction. It slows things down. And
I have
think
insight
that's
into a district that has very, very, very poor IT support, and it is very critical.
right. So
Very critical.
there's
It's not
some
just keep the
things-
Wi-Fi going.
Yeah, it's just keeping things, working. And it says full-time pre-K, something we've looked at, it's half-time. One thing that we know some families want is to be able to have full-time pre-K or have at least that as an option. That would require, we do have space. And we've talked about it the last 3 years, but it would require adding an additional teacher and an aide for that classroom. We've moved the pre-K over to Clough, and that allows us to, build a better, bigger program there, but it would take additional funding. We know it would be great. We'd love to have it. It's in our strategy, but we don't have the revenue right now in order to do that. So I just want the community to know, all you to know, we keep advocating for what we know will make a difference. But we haven't been able to, we know the revenue's not there for all of that. And we're really focused on the needs base currently.
The only thing I want to add is, and we didn't put a slide up on it, but everybody always says, well, do you do any grants? I would say that on average, we have at least $1 million+ worth of grants every year through entitlement grants, competitive grants. Cheryl's written several that have brought in a substantial amount of money. The question that we do get asked a lot is, everybody heard about the Student Opportunity Act? Billions of state money is going to go into the education. All of that money went to low income and high needs districts, rural districts. They're not going to districts that are 82.5% target share cap. So we got, other than a grant that Cheryl wrote that was, I believe, $450,000 over 3 years. Is that right? Other than that grant, we've gotten zero money from the Student Opportunity Act, and we don't foresee that happening in the near future.
No, we will not receive that.
And I think that's at the end, except for questions. So
Yeah.
back to you, Mr. Chair.
Sam, if you go back to that slide with the strategic needs, I know you're just on it.
It's me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This one?
So before I open it up for discussion, I want to highlight, so what we're going for here, or at least from the school committee's perspective, is the needs-based budget. And one of the first questions is probably why needs-based, right? We could go level. And really, when we sat down and looked at it, you look at those numbers, 475, 478, there's not a huge gap. But when you look at reduced is here. Needs, or level is here, and needs is here, right? So it's a relatively small gain, and we actually provide services to students that really need them, right? They're critical. I'd love to come forward with strategic, but I think bringing a strategic budget, we want to truly be strategic with the towns, understanding, okay, you guys are going to DPW, you guys want a senior center, and working with what does that look like, and how do we work together as a town and a district to come up with a strategic budget. And we're coming forward strategically to accomplish that, right? Understanding where we all are. And we're not doing that in a year where we need to do an override, right? So that's why I think the needs-based makes a lot of sense here. And with that, I will open it up for discussion. Mike?
What I see here is a roadmap to get, where you want to be, right? When I look at these numbers, if you got to a needs-based budget, it's a piece of cake to get to strategic within over multiple years with the levy. What I look at here, though, is I'm assuming the far right, the reduced service, Jay, that's based on the numbers we've provided in our
Yes.
subcommittee.
Yes.
I think you have the jump from 43 to 47. That first step is too big. When I talk about smoothing it out, we need to, so I mean, it shouldn't be, and as I look at this, it's like, it's either 43 or 47. There has to be an in-between, so the reductions aren't quite as severe as you're
So
describing,
let me address that because we
So,
did.
the objective for me is to mitigate or minimize override. I'm not saying we would need an override. Yes. The question is, how much of an override and how much can you then build into your levy increases over the outer years? That first step to me, that shocked me when I saw it.
So
I
let me-
understand the math,
All right,
right?
so let me give you a slight answer to that, because we had a lot of discussions about that internally. And the realization that we came to is that for us to have somewhere in between the two, which is what we were trying to target, would require some fairly substantial reductions in current services in order to get to that median strip. And it's very difficult if an operational override is something that's going to be required to say, yes, we're getting additional money through an override, please vote for us, and so we can cut staff.
And
That's the
not- and
challenge
not
we have.
Well,
meet the needs,
it's
because
a
we wouldn't be meeting any of those needs that,
I mean, it's substantial,
Yeah.
the difference. As we started to work
But
through it, it's
that's-
not like one thing, two things.
Well, I mean, what you're saying is we need to do it all in one step. And I would say so if I think about it, it was like 2.5 was coming to Mendon, is that right? Based on the needs based? You probably an increase of 2.5,
Yeah,
right, year over year, 2.5 million, which would mean that based on the number we gave you, we're talking about 1.8 to $2 million override.
in that range, yes.
If that were not successful, you could still ask for it. We would need to find it in the budget. So I think part of me is when I think about smoothing in a multi-year plan, it's understanding that we're in that place, but how do you strategically come out of it? I would rather have a smaller override and explain a multi-year plan. Understand, yeah, there's going to be some pain, but over the subsequent years, we're building out a budget that gets us back to where we are. Because to do it one step, that's a big ask.
It's just hard to advocate for additional tax revenue that's going to have a tax impact on taxpayers so that we can reduce services.
As a taxpayer,
We understand.
within the context of a 5-year plan and the reality, it's.
so it would mean coming back for numerous years of overrides.
Well, no, unless you're
Right.
managing it within the levy. My point is you
You
jumpstart.
can't,
we
you can't
can't
deliver,
with-
you can't
we
deliver within the, like, you
It
can't
would
do,
be
a health insurance
significant.
alone is $2 million.
So $4.5 million.
You're getting an override year one. There isn't an override in this picture. I'm suggesting minimizing the amount of an override. What I'm saying, outer years 3, 4, 5, you potentially are managing towards.
If we did a somewhere in between level services and reduced
Yeah.
services, we're doing an override this year. And then if we want to get back to what's the level next year or 2 years after that, it's at least one more override in those out years. And that's to just be flat, right?
That's an assumed override, assuming that we couldn't have made sure that we had a long-term plan that supported the growth, right? So I think what we've been trying to do in Mendon is have a much better 5-year view of how we grow things over time. I think Mike's point is that this data doesn't allow us to maybe be able to figure out a way to have a smaller override in the short term. Yes, there is a little bit of pain. The story can be, we need a smaller override. We will feel a little bit of pain, but on the outside of it, we'll be able to grow to the strategic way in a much more palatable method within our current operational budget because we planned it that way.
So my question is, how would you do that if you don't have the increase in your levy?
I think that's where we need to work out all of the asks from all of our departments and say, how do we adjust our budgets to account for those things, right?
And
So
I mean, the override small would still be $1 million. I mean, it's not gonna be small relatively. I mean, to go for a 2,
when we were, and some things have swung in the wrong direction in this process. So special ed was one of them, when we were getting through and finalizing some of the numbers. So we were trying to get, that came up at a budget subcommittee meeting, like, all right, can we reduce that down? And then with that swing, it would be very impactful, even to 1 million is extremely 1 to 1.5 reduction is really impactful. Not just a little bit of pain, it's losing a lot.
And the other piece is the 3 main drivers that we showed you at the very beginning. Health insurance is up $2 million. Salaries are up 1.5. Now, yes, if you have a few less personnel, your health insurance costs are going to come down a little bit, and your salaries are going to come down a little bit. Not enough to get you down to that level that you're talking about. That's the realization we came to, is that, you know, I'll give you an example. Let's say you had a reduction of 10 people that were on family plans. It's costing us, say, $30,000. That's $300,000. That's not, you know, 2.5 million or 2 million. You're talking small peanuts of adjustments there.
For what it's worth, all right. 2.5% up in this year is $648,068. Want a lowball new growth? Let's say 3.5. Let's say 350. So we have $1 million.
We know that.
So we can run.
Yeah.
We still have a town to run.
Absolutely, we understand it.
We still have a town to run. And Mendon isn't.
Same
they have a town to
numbers probably are I don't know what your numbers are for revenue levy and 2.5, you know, new growth.
I want to open it up and I'll get you into it, but Paul, understand, we're talking about health insurance increases at $2 million, which is bigger than your 3.5 total levy.
I understand that.
So I can fully respect and appreciate what the town's gonna increase that within the levy, but
You've heard me
the
say
$2 million number doesn't change.
Jim, you've heard me say at these other meetings, okay? There's people in Upton that are trying like hell to stay in their house right now.
I
Okay,
understand, and I do empathize, I do.
So, I mean, to Mike's question, like, can we see, like, can you enumerate for like each step, like what are the specific cuts? I mean, I imagine that you have done this and maybe they're on slides that were removed, but I think it's useful for people to see, like, okay, if we ask for, you know, X override, what exactly is cut? And then what are the long-term, like what will snowball from those cuts? Because you've talked about how cutting, you know, some services will probably lead to more students leaving the district, and then that will lead to other, like, we'll lose some other funding based on that. So I think it would be useful to see, because I see Mike's point about that as a big step. So I think if people will want to know what are the losses in between those steps, right? So they're still big, but I think just specifically saying, like,
We can do some, and we're working on it right now, because I want to give an example and have it not be because it's people's jobs,
right,
and it's hypotheticals,
right.
So if I'm going to give a hypothetical. Let's say we had a library media specialist at the middle school, which we don't, which is something that's been asked for every year, and that would be a position that we've already cut years ago and that we had to cut, right? You know, so that could be a person type of thing. The number of teachers, if you take $4 million gap, and if you averaged, the average is 65,000 to 100,000 for a teacher, you can do your math on your own if we just went with personnel. Of the amount of personnel that would be. And so when we have 6 first grade teachers with an average size of 20 and 3 at each school, and if you had to drop a teacher who are my math people with average can do that math right now, the class size is what it can go up. So we're going to work on that after this, and have an impact statement on some of it. But when we were looking at the level service and trying to see if we could reduce the million, some areas are trying to think of things that aren't necessarily people that we could talk about. We have stipends, 400,000-ish, right? In stipends, and stipends paid for coaches. They pay for department chairs. They pay for coordinate, what else is in it? Oh, all the student activities. So if you are in a yearbook, there's a stipend for a teacher to work with those students after school. It's for music, band, and art. And so then if you cut stipends some of them in order to save teachers' jobs or, staff jobs, then you don't have people for all of those student activities. So all of those student activities and all the students are impacted if that was a choice that was made. Or what were some of the other things? Can you think of? Yeah, I mean, so we went through and it was so impactful that we got to this point where it didn't make sense to have that, especially if you needed to go, if we knew you didn't have enough, funds.
So let me try to characterize what you're saying. So that
I think you're a good enough job.
No. I just want it doesn't always stick the first time, right? So if we say we want less of an override than what we're proposing here, what we're essentially saying is we're talking about a little bit better than reduced service for this year. And then over the 5 years, we work on trying to build all that stuff back again. That's what you're really saying.
And you put forward a choice. I mean, if you were to present a multi-year, what I see on that's a challenge. That's a problem, right? We got a budget problem we've got to solve for.
Mm-hmm.
There are multiple paths we could go potentially. I think to your point, explaining what those paths could be. I mean, it could be that when you're talking, even I mentioned, I said, I'm not necessarily talking about one override. What I'm saying is the first step might be a smaller override, better chance of success. And you might demonstrate we would come back in year 4 or 5 with another override. You know what I mean? But to explain the path forward, or we can do one override, right? I mean, start to get feedback that way. Maybe people want a large override. But I think given the capital from last year, talked about this, becoming for a $2 million override operationally, I've heard people say to me, didn't we just do that? They don't understand the difference.
We will explain that. We talked a lot about choices, giving choices,
And for anyone watching this, it's important to understand the difference between operational and capital. These are two completely different things. None of the capital money that we got last year can be used, and even the money from each capital project cannot be spent within the other capital projects.
But does any of that money that you're spending on capital reduce like operational overhead or costs going forward, or it just completely
we won't have to buy so many buckets for the roof leaks.
well, there's $10.
Yeah, right.
But that's a good question, because it is confusing, and it is only for the capital projects. You cannot use it for anything else.
What I get concerned about, I like I like the concept, the idea makes a lot of sense, but when it comes down to it, what you're saying is we need to significantly reduce to cover even just healthcare, and there's no guarantee that we'll make it 5 years, right? Like we're at less than level, right? We're still at reduced, and there's no guarantee we're going to make it 5 years within levy limits.
Carlton.
But I'm not suggesting. I mean, your plan might include an override 5 years up instead of waiting for over 10 years.
It could be next year.
Let me give you
It could be a lot of these, right?
Let me give you a quick little example. So based on what Paul said, let's say you have $1 million in new money coming in this year, approximately, right? Let's say Mendon had the same $1 million. So between both towns, we can get half of that, because let's just throw that as a number out. It would take us 5 years of doing that within the levy to get to the option 1 this year, not 5 years out, because in 5 years out, that cost is going to be considerably more. We don't even get close to it. I don't see any way within the levy that the towns we could do something and make budget reductions and stay at a point, but as you go forward, the only way to continue to fund above what your levy is to do an override every single year. I don't think there's an appetite for that. Whether there's an appetite for this is a whole other story. Because I realize how substantial this is.
Every single year, but I've also said that you could do multiple overrides, suggesting that you're reducing the impact in this next.
But you'd be reducing services year after year after year to stay within those
Like,
numbers.
you
would never be able to even get back to your even level service budget. In 5 years.
That's the point, right? If you reduce services this year, to get back to level services of this year, it's going to take you 2 or 3 years. Right? Like,
There are assumptions being made on how much of the levy from each town is coming to the schools in Jay's examples. We haven't even committed to anything.
No.
If we have a plan in place, we understand what we can spend or what we need to spend, and we come to some level of agreement. And once again, it's not just within the levy, Jay, because I've said on more than one occasion, we might need another override. Maybe it's 1.5 million in year 3. The point is, it's math and it's cost, and you can put in assumptions for the increasing cost of these things. And you could lay out a picture that might even tell people, why don't we just take the hit once? Right now, people will look at that and say, are you kidding me? That's a big ask. Whereas if you lay out the option is this or this, you might find things, well, I'd rather get hit once and know what my fixed costs are for the next 4 years. You know what I mean?
He wants to ask.
But besides the ask, so I think the other thing is, last year when we were here, I believe it was $30 million total
Capital, yeah.
capital. And I think that it was sold really well, at least like you mentioned at the town meeting. And when I say sold, it was explained to the people. To me here, if I was someone who didn't know anything at that town meeting, and I heard an override that is what, 80% plus is just health insurance, salaries, and those 3 things. That's something that me personally, I know because my health insurance went up and everybody else did. And I think that plus the fact they have to understand that we have a cheap option or a less expensive option, the least expensive option for teachers and so forth. I think to me, people understand that. Whereas if you go for a small override, who's to say, again, it's not going to happen in a couple of years. I think it will personally. And who's to say right now that next year health insurance will go up another 20%, let's say.
I agree. Well,
Then that's the issue that I think that, and I'm looking ahead and saying, okay, let's say it's defeated, heaven forbid, and it goes up again. At least you can go back and say, well, what are we supposed to do? And right now, I think there's a lot of people out there who would understand that just to bring it to level services, like you said, we have to find this money for those 3 things. Forgetting the other stuff in there. Just those 3 things. The health insurance, when I saw it, I never thought of it. And I'm like I said, I work in health insurance. I mean, it's not in health insurance, but in healthcare. And I never thought it would be that high. My health insurance went up and I work for MGB.
Okay, how much, if any, of the capital debt is gonna hit this year?
It's about 700,000. It's about 350 each town. Not exact numbers. I can give you exact numbers because I do.
well, while you pull that up, let me give Carl a chance.
Super Carl a chance. I got the numbers right.
Carl Hummel, this is my first year on the Mendon Finance Committee, so I appreciate the slide deck and the budget proposal. I am expecting that between now and town meeting, I'm going to be getting asked 2 questions, and I want to make sure that I have an elevator speech answer for them. The first question is going to be, how come they're going to put something on the ballot again this year when we did the same thing last year? And the answer is, last year was capital for fixing the buildings. This year is just a regular override because the amount of money it costs to run the schools doesn't meet up with our income growth. And that means that at least every 5 years, we always need to have a 2.5 override. We've been lucky, what with the COVID subsidies and budget tightening, that we managed to stretch that out to almost twice that. But going to it for a 2.5 budget override is a normal process in Massachusetts towns. Is that a reasonable response, or should I modify that?
I think that's spot on, and I think to add one small snippet is that capital projects are financed over 20 years and that debt eventually rolls off.
Okay. My second question I'm going to be adding is what the previous speaker referred to. Why the heck are healthcare costs going so up? And I think that I was hearing three answers to it. The first one is prescriptions. The second one is we have some very expensive claims this year. And the third one is that we had over 30 people joining our health plan, where in normal years, we only get 5 to 10. And I wanted to make sure I had the right numbers for that.
Just a quick correction on the numbers. The numbers are usually 4 to 6, but this year
Okay.
it's like 16 to 20.
4 to 6 plans, 16 to 20 plans, could be an individual
Right.
plan, family.
Right.
So obviously, if you have a family plan, you got 4 people, 5 people on the plan, that's 5 people being added, but the gist of what you're saying is correct.
And to your point, Carl, I think it's very relatable to everybody. Healthcare costs are absolutely skyrocketing for everyone. It is
And-
national.
And why are more people joining the school plan? Well, because the school health plan may be better than what they had. The spouse or other people may have lost a job. They had kids and now need to have a family plan. So those are the ways that I can try and reassure Mendon citizens. Why is there so much? My personal feeling is that you shouldn't lowball your 2.5 override. I think that you should go in asking for enough money to get by for at least 3 years, and then do a sell job at annual town meeting by taking this slide deck and improving it. So that's my personal feedback to this joint committee.
Appreciate it, Carl, and I want to open up and give it to Eric here, who's been very patient.
But Lori, you asked a question a few minutes ago, right? Who's the math guy real quick, but you know, if you said the average salary is 60 to 100, call it 80 to split the difference, and you're talking a $4 million delta, right? That's 50 positions. That's 50 positions.
Not including,
Well, hang on, let me, 50 positions, if you just peanut butter spread out all the people, the next thing you would do is, I'm guessing, is go double the cost to do sports, you'd eliminate stipends, you get rid of all the other stuff that the school has, right? And so maybe you go from 50 positions to 40 positions or something like that. But it's substantive, right? I mean, you're talking about, our total staff is the school, but you're talking double digit. Yeah, 400, right? So you're talking double digit percentage that would be impacted if we were on.
And to Eric's point, reminder that unemployment also factors into that, so it adds cost and
which is more, adds more positions. Right?
it's a lot, right? Like it would impact the entire district.
Let me answer Paul's question. Debt service for Mendon next year is 328,758. I think I sent the numbers to Jeremy, but I'm not sure. Then Upton's numbers are 407,173, and I thought I maybe sent them to you, but maybe I didn't. Memory's not always that great, so.
I don't recall seeing them.
Yeah, maybe I did. Maybe in my head I thought I did, and it never actually happened. I mean, that's a possibility. Yeah, I intended to, so that's, but that's the number. 407,173 for Upton, 328,758 for Mendon. That'll all be outside the levy. But it does add impact to the tax rate, I understand.
When did you have a
Yeah.
comment? And then we'll go to Carl.
Okay, yeah, just something we haven't talked about. It will end up in the slide deck, and if you look at previous presentations, for years I've had people highlight our reductions, our reallocations of staff, and the efficiencies and things we've done. So we have, as an example, at the high school, it's approximately 6 positions that we have reduced or reallocated out of the high school because there's been some declining enrollment here over the last number of years. That has already impacted some of our program offerings in a few places where we have to offer courses every other year, et cetera. To continue, so we've been doing this over the last 5 years since I've been here, to do it even more. Every position is an impactful one because we're so bare bones of where we're at. So I can't emphasize that enough. If we looked at reducing by, let's say, 1 million, quick math, that was like 20 positions. I don't,
Yeah.
that's why where we stopped.
And I want to highlight that in years past, we've always presented at level service and what needs would look like, what strategic would look like, and we've always presented at this is what level is. I think going at an operational override, getting to needs is a good place. And if we have to reduce in years forward, we can do that. It would really suck, but we could do that and it wouldn't be catastrophic like it is this year. Carl, I see you got your hand up. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking ahead to another question. Why shouldn't we adopt the slash and burn budget and minimize the 2.5 override? And I believe from what I've heard, the answer is because one, it won't affect the costs that we can't get rid of, and it will cut all of the activities and extracurriculars that make school fun because you have to cut everybody's stipend. Are there other things that you could put on that slide?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and, probably 40 to 50 headcount. Right, so class sizes.
Class sizes, right. Class sizes
Right.
would skyrocket.
Class sizes and offerings, right? You start to lose all your AP classes, you start to lose the specials, you'd have the bare minimum of phys ed, but art and music goes away. Class sizes go up from the low 20s to the high 20s, maybe touching 30.
And the follow-on effect is that we have to pay more when people leave our school district to go to other schools and charter schools, and we lose money because people stop coming in to our school district.
Right. Other districts, people stop opting in, so we lose that revenue. People start opting out. And that costs us, right, charter schools.
So one case example is Northbridge, and I asked her permission that because they had failures of overrides, our number one group of students come from Northbridge from school choice, but it's been a spiral impact that it takes years and years to recover from. We've done a great job from the back going to 2010 over the last, how many years it's been, 16 years to build back this district. And it would be setting us back if we had to be in that reduced service.
And I think to that point, an excellent point is that if this ever did happen, trying to recruit 2 years, if you're a new teacher coming out and you have the choice between a district that laid off 20 or 30 teachers versus another district, it's going to be more difficult, I think, to recruit as time goes on. I really do.
Can we go back to the driver slide? That would be kind of the question you may get asked on this is health insurance, which is what, 2 million or something? 1.9 increase. If that's the big surprise and everything else was known coming into this year, why isn't the override for 2 million? As an example, you know what I mean?
It's not just
salaries don't go up.
No. Salaries is no, that's contractual. You knew that. Special
education
education
is not.
Okay, well, so why not? I'm saying a person might look at this. I understand health insurance. Absolutely. It makes sense. You need extra funding for health insurance. But I don't understand why the override ask is 4 million and not 2 million if I see 2 million on that.
So
I'm just saying, the answer, because there's this big step, I think you
Right.
bridge.
So the answer to that, and I think the very first or second slide says it, the cost of running municipal public schools or towns, everything else, the cost of running them is exceeding the levy, the amount of money that you can raise through your levy. It's a growth in that 2.5%. Nobody's budget's going up 2.5% anymore. You're having to, things cost more. Everywhere around the thing, everything costs more money.
Those numbers aren't that, I'm just saying, because this, I've seen this in subcommittee, those numbers.
I mean, saying that we knew the salaries were gonna go up that amount, that's great. We don't have enough money coming in to even cover that. Because Paul's saying maybe Upton could afford 500,000 and Mendon says maybe we could afford 600,000, but let's say it's 600 in each town, 1.2 million, that doesn't even cover the salaries.
I'm just questioning the first step of, I heard slash and burn, which I don't think anyone's suggesting. I'm still talking about minimizing the impact in year one. And I'm just saying, when I hear the arguments being made, they're logical. But I think when you keep focusing on one number like healthcare, you see a $2 million increase, which is exorbitant, and everybody understands that. The question is, why is the override 4 million?
So
right?
Sam, can you go back to the town slide? The KGO, Maureen's got it, sorry. But I think that's part of the conversation, Mike, is, and we get there's the minimum contributions, there's the 2 town formulas, all that gets in. Glasses not that great, but Mendon had KGAR over 10 years of 1.6. I think the total new revenue plus the, whatever, the levy and all that's probably been 2.5 to 3%. The school has been 2.5 to 3%, but we've done it through the COVID grants, we've done it through the tailwinds, insurance not going, right? So to answer your question, why all of a sudden is there a bigger number? In many ways, what we should have done, if we could have, is tucked away a few dollars in the years past.
Which is why when I'm talking about a multi-year smoothing effect, for lack of a better term, is maybe that carrot has got to jump. Maybe we've got to start budgeting 3 to 4% over the next, et cetera. You know what I mean? That's all. Maybe to your point, logical, and we've benefited from this approach.
Well, and
Now we've got to kind of look at the other ways. What happens if we can't? We've got to increase that. We've got to plan on increasing that. The override, I'm just suggesting that a large override year one is going to be a tough sell.
Yeah, agreed.
So I'm just suggesting, well, if we need to look at this over multiple cycles, can we manage it? I don't think we've collectively looked at, can we manage that? Honestly.
Just to what Eric said, we used COVID monies, we used this, we used that. We used the one-time revenue to cover an ongoing expense.
No, we did
No,
not.
no,
As a
no.
district, we used it for one-time expenses, not recurring
We're very
costs.
insistent on making that point. We did not do that.
I
incredibly
didn't
stupid
think they
thing.
did, but I'm kind of wondering.
No, we did not do that.
I'm gonna make a suggestion that the district come up with what Mike is asking for, at least as a piece of data for us, at least Mendon, for us to have the discussion of, is there something that we believe we can do within our budget to maybe get after what Mike is trying to get after? So
And maybe because Jeremy's on the phone, if that needs to be a collaborative process to kind of manage that.
What would be helpful?
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I like to just, split things in half, right? So you're going for, the jump is 4, what if it was 2, right? And then, at least from Mendon, if Upton wants to do the same analysis, that's great. From a Mendon perspective, what would be Mendon's assessment if there was a intermediate step between level service and the slash and burn?
So if you went to that slide with 4 pillars, you're saying add a fifth in between.
Yeah.
And you want to call out, hey, how many headcount are you losing?
Yeah.
What are the other?
Yeah, exactly. Moderate reduced, right? It's pain. It is pain. I do think, at least in Mendon, it's a lot more palatable given the fact that we did have the debt exclusion last year, right? So there's a lot of reasons why having that information can both either identify something of value or help prove why we need to go up to the next level. So it has both options, right? Nobody's saying we should do one or the other, but at least it allows us to do the proper analysis, everything top to bottom.
Right. It's a fair ask. Like, I think we certainly should and can do that.
And we were, leading up to this week, we were.
Was there a slide that was
we
in
were-
there that got pulled?
There was a in between, there was this, I didn't pull the slide, but I never,
Oh, my question.
we went to the 4, we were working on an in between. Cause we know where this landed when, we were looking at it, but it was a lot of,
Yeah.
it was impactful.
And I do think
We
that,
stopped and then focused on let's explain that what these are here for the purpose, but we can do that.
yeah, I totally get it. I do think it will help tell a story no matter what. So let's do the,
I think you'll be able to convince people
why you didn't do it when you were putting the slide together, or how impactful it is. Because people they just don't understand that.
No, I know, yeah.
Even when they do understand it, they ignore it.
Yeah.
And it takes a while.
Well, it takes a number of times to understand. It's a
I
lot
think
of.
it's a worthwhile exercise. We can certainly do that and get that information to you guys. At the same time, I do want to highlight just how low that CAGR for the towns has been over the years. And I think that does show a lot of due diligence and trying to make sure that we're not hitting the towns with huge increases year over year and fiscal responsibility on the district's end. But I do think that it is a worthwhile exercise.
And I will throw out my personal opinion is I completely agree with all of those things. That doesn't change the fact that coming up this year, there will have to be a vote that hits people's wallets in some way. It's about the dollars and cents today. It doesn't like all the analysis. That's all great. And totally agree. I think everybody's been doing a great job so far. And I've personally put people at ease to help articulate that point. It's not going to change anything about the fact that somebody's bill that shows up in their mailbox is going up, right? At the end of the day, that's all it is.
It's fine.
Agreed.
Okay, so,
The good advice, right? It's like, allow the conversation.
yeah.
Any other questions?
So, well, I guess, I think I find this very convincing, but I think, and Carl mentioned going to town meeting, but we know, at least in Mendon, a small fraction of the voters go to town meeting. So often things do pretty well at town meeting, but then at the ballot box, they don't always go as, according to plan. So I guess I'm wondering about the outreach, and I know the outreach was very successful last year. I'm just thinking, this presentation, is there an outreach plan? I know it was really helpful, Marie, when you went to the senior center in Mendon and spoke directly to at least, some of the residents. And I know it feels really soon to me, right? May feels very soon to me. So I'm just wondering, what is the plan? What do you need to actually vote on the budget? You haven't had your budget hearing yet. So is that sort of when the outreach?
So I can speak to that.
Okay.
And it's a great question. I've been bucketing this in three, kind of categories in the process. We're in the get to the number, what's the number? And March 9th, when we have the hearing, when they certify, and we're gonna likely, I'm guessing, maybe speaking for you, certifying at the higher number, because you can't ever go up, but we can always go down, right, at that time. But that's my full presentation. I tried to give as everything that we could think of in that presentation. It's there, it's out there, all the facts, talk about impact. It's general impact. Then the next step, engagement begins right then, and we've already started a little bit. We've presented the budget situation to all of our staff, which is what we did with capital before, and then it'll be starting the engagement, meeting. We will present everywhere that is available, and then there will be communications about facts. If it ends up being, going to the ballot, we can't be advocating and doing that. That has to be townspeople, not us, but we can speak like we did before and speak about the facts, answer questions, FAQ on the website. That's what pretty much I'll be doing for the next 2 months.
When is your next
yeah.
contract negotiation? Your team?
Next year.
Next year. Yeah. So every time you have a question, as soon as we can get the answer and get that information available, the actual impact, I keep saying, takes a really long time because of contractual, there's a lot to go through on that, but the larger impact we can share.
Did you hear any more about Norfolk Ag?
No, I haven't gotten any other. I think we gave you some of the information. There were not a lot of new applicants from Upton at the last time I looked. I think there was only one. There were 6 for Mendon. It doesn't mean they all attend. It's a little different plan this year, but they're kind of,
When you hear the story about the blind draw Valley Tech, how much that's going to affect everybody?
Yeah, I haven't heard. You might have heard. I haven't heard how that's impacting it. I mean, that basically means that people don't go here; they go there, and they assess the towns, and right.
No, that you're limited as to how many kids you can send. I know, in our case, we've got a good hit in the Valley Tech budget because we picked up six kids.
That's this current, because you're going to get assessed next year for the enrollment this year.
Yeah, I know. No, for this budget cycle,
right?
Valley Tech's we picked up 6 kids.
Yeah,
Valley Tech.
Have you guys heard anything from Valley Tech? Maybe Jeremy has, I don't know.
So Jeremy, let us know the other night and,
Yeah.
and they were supposed to presentation on Monday, but there was blizzard. So Jeremy just hopped on. I'll let him talk.
Yeah, so Valley Tech is not under an obligation to do an apportionment under its lottery system, but they are going to do an apportionment. So what Mendon will see in fiscal 27 is a reduction of 1 because we're keys off the October 1st enrollment from the prior fall, so that has nothing to do with the lottery. So we're going to see, I think, from 75 to 74, or 74 to 73, something like that, for fiscal 27. And then the lottery, which impacts this coming fall's enrollment, will impact the fiscal 28 budget. Valley Tech is doing a kind of 5 to 7 year phase in of their apportionment. And so Mendon will likely see a reduction in the mid 70s to where we are right now to like the mid 50s in terms of a 4-year enrollment trend. They base that upon apportionment of 8th grade population and total population, this rolling 3 or 4 year calculation. So it will be slow in terms of its impact on enrollment, but I think they're doing it in a measured and fair way. It will be different for every community based upon if they are kind of over or under subscribed as a proportionate share right now. So as from Mendon's perspective, and I can't speak to Upton's, didn't ask them about that, but from Mendon's perspective, we are oversubscribed in terms of just a direct apportionment in our enrollment now. So we will see a lower BVT enrollment over the next 5 to 7 years than we have right now.
Just so everybody knows, that's Jeremy Spell who's behind the curtain there. That's the town
Those kids
administrator.
have to go to school. Some other ones.
I'm coordinating toddler bedtime and budget meetings, so apologies for that.
Or maybe
Yeah, possibly, but
that would be good.
Yeah.
Anything else? All right.
Can I add one thing? If you walk away and you have a question that you think of that you didn't ask, please just send Jay and I those questions, and that's incredibly helpful for us, especially down the road when we'll need to do an FAQ. We're just collecting them and we're chipping away at the answers we can get it to and add it to the list. So thank you.
Sorry, just quick question. So, just so that we're clear, it would be illegal to lay off people based on their insurance needs, right? So like,
Absolutely.
I just want to establish that because I just feel like people will say, well, like, can't they just cut out the expensive
Yeah,
ones?
will. Yeah.
I just-
We all
I feel
know some
like we
people
should
say
establish
That would
that is
violate a lot of
illegal.
laws.
Right, that would bring lawsuits, right, that would bring lawsuits and more expense. So
Yes,
I
no.
That would
wanted
be
to
very.
clarify.
We would not do that. No.
Okay.
We'd like
They'll
to
say, can't there be a
follow
waiting
us.
period for someone who wants to come on, but it's gonna cost a lot of money and help them,
Right, that would be illegal.
Yeah.
It would be wrong, but also it would be costly for the district. So
It's
it's
criminal.
Good
call.
All right, anything else before we close out? Other topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair within 40 hours, calling meeting to order. Any? We do still have public comment. Is there anyone on the phone there? I see no hands raised. And with that, the school committee will close out their meeting at 7:46. It's on the dot. You guys want to close out your meeting as well?
I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So
Second,
All those in favor?
I.
And motion to adjourn.
7:46.
So moved.
All in favor?
Second.
Aye.
Second.
Cheers.
Please.